Arteta! What a strike! What a screamer! Zola! And a fantastic goal! Arsenal back in it! And here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal in front.
Nothing says Arsenal has found its level quite like a 3-0 away win in the Europa League. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith, and you can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Look, on the one hand, we want to be out of the Europa League. On the other hand, maybe it's good for us. Maybe this is our level. I don't know. We'll discuss that. We will certainly be discussing the fighting Bukaya Sakas, which is what this club is going to be known as from now on. On Sunday, Saka, Aubameyang, Pepe, or we riot. What a night for the young man. We'll talk about the youngsters. We'll talk about maybe some concerns from this game as well. Tim is here. You can find him on Twitter at Stoberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
Good to have you back. Clive's not here. Paul's not here. Scott's not here. So we'll just have a nice little chat with Tim. Quickly, I want to say thank you to everybody who bared with us for the post-Watford podcast. Obviously, wasn't the most fun match to discuss, but I think it was handled sensibly, and I think the reaction to it was very generous and kind. Thank you. I think people really liked also that we were willing to put the promotional stuff aside for that podcast, and we were happy to do it. So be sure to sign up for theathletic.com/Arsenal Vision. 50% off and just $2.50 a month. Look, it's what we do. It's what we do. We promote The Athletic because we love James and we love Amy and Michael Cox and Ornstein. And hey, I even write there. So come on, get involved. Theathletic.com/Arsenal Vision. If you hate it, cancel it. You got a free month. Read for free for a month and then move on. As long as you do that, you also get it for $2.50 a month after that. So do that. Sign up for Patreon. My God, we did a Watford rewatch. Why? Why? We did a Doomcast, so if you like your Doomy, you can do that, and then you can join us and chat in the Discord. Okay, enough promotion. I'm sorry, but it's back, and it's part of our lives. And now we move on. So, Tim, did a pre-match show, a live pre-match show, and it was basically 45 minutes of me moaning. Imagine that. One of the reasons we don't do the podcast on match days usually is to let the emotion of the moment settle. And I have to admit, when the lineup was announced, I had this really frustrated feeling, and I think the frustrated feeling comes from this. I felt that we should heavily rotate for this game. And my argument was we could lose this game. It does not matter. We'll still get through in the group. And right now the priority should be the Premier League, where we have a big, big opportunity and we need to find a way to take it. And the issue for me is I just want Emery to make decisions that intellectually I can reconcile them. I don't have to agree with his decisions. I just want to be able to understand them intellectually. And so in my mind, you have a choice. Put out a first-choice 11, a really strong side designed to get you the 3 points and get this group over with early. It wouldn't be my preference, but I'd understand it. But he did rotate, which I'm obviously saying I support, but the first guy who should be rotated out, in my opinion, to protect him is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. He has to play 38 matches in the Premier League this season. He has to. And especially right now when we have no one behind him. You could have put Pepe up front, try to get him off the mark. Say I'm rotating for this game. One of the reasons you rotate is to rest people, and no one needs to be protected, wrapped in cotton wool more than Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. I know you slightly disagree, so you can maybe give me a perspective that helps me reconcile the decision to start Aubameyang when you've decided to rotate.
So first of all, I think rotation, it's weird. I spoke a little bit to the Arsenal women manager, Joe Montemurro, about this on Monday evening, actually, because they're playing a lot of games and they've got quite a small squad. And he said, with rotation, that rotation isn't quite what fans and writers think it is. He said that quite often you have to make the decisions on individuals, and a lot of that is based on what you think their condition is, what you think their mindset is. Sometimes you just think, just keep that person going, just keep them in, keep them going, don't interrupt them. They're all good, they're fine. And usually when players are playing well, their movements are good, their movements are sharp. Players in good form don't usually kind of get muscle injuries and things like that because they're just moving so confidently and so quickly, and they're so sharp and they're quick and they're away, and that sometimes it's just better to keep those players going. And sometimes if you give them a pause, that's a bit of a killer. So I think there's a bit of that possibly going on because he rotated some positions and not others. He obviously decided to sit Socrates out, but keep David Luiz in. In the next Europa League game, he might do that completely the opposite way around. He might keep Socrates in and have Luiz out, and he might do that in other positions. So he played Xhaka tonight at home to Standard Liège. He might sit Xhaka out, for example. So There's rotation in terms of what's coming ahead in the next group games. There's also a League Cup game on Tuesday night, which someone like Aubameyang, for example, is definitely not going to play in that. I would imagine.
I'm allowed to be mad if he plays in that, right? If he plays in that, then I can get mad? Okay.
Yeah. I think so, yes, yeah. But I think the reason he'd have played Aubameyang tonight, and I've got a lot of sympathy with the decision, maybe because I made peace with it a good few days before. I never thought he would. And the reason I never thought he would is because there just weren't a lot of options. Had Eddie Nketiah still been at the club, then maybe I'd have looked at this and said, come on, let's have Aubameyang on the bench, give Nketiah his time, and if after 70 minutes we need a goal, maybe bring Aubameyang on. But I didn't really see the choices. Again, maybe Pepe, but I'm already concerned with Pepe that we're asking him to do something completely different in every game. So he's kind of played as a floating striker away from home in both of his away starts so far. I'm slightly worried about that because I think that means Emery doesn't trust his defensive contribution, and therefore we're going to keep seeing this kind of jiggery pokery with messing around with the team because he doesn't want Pepe on the wing for away games. Instead, he wants to play him up front and then just play nobody on the wing, which really shores things up for us. So I think there was an element to which he didn't have a lot of choices. Yeah, he could have played Pepe up front, maybe, but I think at this stage of the season, there's very little chance of fatigue for Aubameyang. If Aubameyang plays all 6 group games, yeah, absolutely, that's stupid. He shouldn't. But I just felt that tonight, when there's no Lacazette there, he's pretty much the only striker we've got. This is the hardest game in the group. I think we've won the group now. I think obviously it's not done, but I think done. This result wins us the group. Yeah, wins us the group. So it's kind of done. And without Lacazette there, if we'd had Lacazette, then, I think we can potentially share the game time. We could have shared the game time a little bit. We could have done 60-30 with those two, or just played Lacazette and given Aubameyang a break, depending. But I think at this stage of the season, we don't need to worry too much about rotation. I think that's more of a kind of November, December kind of question, and players are still kind of hitting their straps for the season, so I understood all of the reasons he played Aubameyang tonight, and I think if I were in his shoes I probably would have done as well. And I do think there's an argument that as much as you and I might say, or some fans might say, I don't care about the Europa League, I wouldn't have cared about losing this game. I'm not quite sure that's true. Had we lost this game 2-0, I'm pretty sure the reaction wouldn't have been sanguine towards the team or Emery. I think he would have thought, let's get the win. Let's kind of. There's a lot of negativity. There's a lot coming out in the press. There's a lot of suggestions that the players aren't happy, blah, blah, blah. Vinay came out today and said something about, I'm really happy with Emery. And when the club are saying stuff like that, that's usually because they recognise there's a fire to put out. Yeah. And it's
the dreaded vote of confidence.
Picked up on, there is that, but it's mainly because they've picked up on the fact that people are unhappy and that they feel like they have to, the sort of thing that Gazidis became too cowardly to do, for Arsene Wenger just before he gave him a new contract, when he kind of went into hiding and just let Wenger take a hiding. These guys, I think, are a bit more on top of it and just kind of said, look, yep, we're happy with him. That doesn't necessarily have to be true, but it's just, it fills the void, and into the void gets sucked speculation. So, they kill that dead. So I do think there's an argument that you could say tonight they did just need to win just to quieten things down. So I think there are a number of kind of small reasons to have played Aubameyang tonight, all of which put together add up to, I'd say, a fairly decent reason.
I don't mind much of that. I mean, I'll not take issue, but just respond to a few things there. First of all, I totally agree with you that no matter what the attitude is towards the Europa League, fans will throw their toys out of the pram when you lose. So if we had lost tonight, the reaction would have been bad. Having said that, I think the job of a big club manager is to make the right calls in the face of fan opprobrium and angst, right? So if the right call is resting Aubameyang for this game, the fact that fans will fall out with you if you lose is not a reason to make the wrong call. I think that's why you need big personalities managing big clubs, because sometimes they have to do things that the fans aren't going to like, and you have to be able to just manage to the best solution, not the fan solution, if that makes sense.
I'd say it's not just a fan thing though, because that's a player thing as well. That might be my retort to that. That if the players have lost 2 games in a row, Yeah,
no, and then the only other thing I'd say is with respect to the fitness levels, like I tend to ascribe to the theory that there's a certain number of minutes you can put into a set of legs. If a player plays 4,000 minutes in a season, they're more likely to break down than if they play 2,000 minutes in a season. So at 30 years old, being the most important player at the club and currently the only striker at the club of any merit, I just want to keep the minutes out of his legs. And, that is, I admit, I'm a worrier. That's why my friends call me Whiskers. So maybe I just needed to take a deep breath and forget about it. But I do think once you decide you can rotate for this game, your first priority should be rotating Aubameyang to the bench. And you know what? You give Pepe the start up front. You see if he can break his duck. You see if it gives him, a little bit of freedom. This was a wide open game. He would have had some space to run into. And if you need goals late, you can bring Aubameyang on. But again, it's post hoc analysis at this point. He made the choice. It is what it is. Aubameyang got through it. And let's hope we don't see any wear or tear issues on him down the road. What I will say is if he ever picks up a knock at any point in this season or any season in the future of his career, I will have been proven right. Having said that, that's a joke, by the way. One more thing about the lineup, and because there's a lot still to get to in the game, and I don't want to just do lineup stuff because we did that in the pre-match show, but the Ozil thing. This seems like a game where you can, he was in the team for Watford. I think for the most part he actually played well and was on the pitch during the better spells of the game. I don't think we played brilliantly at any stages, but I don't think he was a problem. I actually said on Twitter, I watched the game again. I did a rewatch for Patreon, and I thought he was fine. I really thought he played pretty well. This is a chance to get him a couple games on the trot to, give us someone who can put his foot on the ball and give us a bit of control, which is something I do think we're lacking right now. We don't sustain possession. An interesting stat making the rounds that I saw in the Discord was just that in the second half of the Watford game, other than 2 possessions, we didn't have a single possession that was 9 events or longer in the second half outside of the 2 longest ones. So we've struggled to get our foot on the ball and just have control, and he can certainly give us some of that. So are you surprised and maybe disappointed that he wasn't given an opportunity to be one of the sort of senior calming figures in the squad for this game?
Yeah, I am. First of all, for the reasons you state, for the tactical reasons, I'm coming round to the idea that at the moment, and this might change as things become more cohesive, LOL, I'm of the opinion that one of Ceballos or Ozil has to be in there to link things up for us. I think particularly the beginning of the second half, I got the real Watford feels from this game again, in that there was a good 15-minute period at the beginning of that first half where we couldn't get out. We just couldn't, because, a midfield 3 for their qualities, a midfield 3 of Xhaka, Torreira and Willock is not going to pass you out of midfield. It's not going to combine and get you out of tight spaces. And so we had kind of the same thing that we had against Watford, where we were just boxed into a corner, we were hacking the ball out, and it was just coming straight back to us. And again, our kind of front 3 were just completely cut off. And I just think at the moment one of Ozil or Ceballos has to be there to be that link, to give, not just the link between the midfield and the attack, but to give the defence an out ball. And if you've got someone like, say, Kolasinac at left back who you don't trust as an out ball, then you've got one player less that you can pass to. We had Callum Chambers at right back, who isn't a right back, and just because he's played at right back badly, that doesn't mean he's a right back. It means he's definitely not. And so that's not going to help you progress out. But also, I just think, so from the tactical point, I absolutely would have played Ozil tonight. I think he'd have loved this game, to be honest, because it was
all in transition. The whole thing was in transition.
Yeah. There was no midfield there. I mean, Saka's come out with 2 assists tonight with 2 through balls, and he could have had a couple more, which, one was slightly underhit for Aubameyang, one was slightly overhit for Torreira. I mean, I think Ozil would have killed tonight, but I also think from the kind of, shall we say, political viewpoint, I just think it's creating an issue again unnecessarily, because he's played 71 minutes of football all season. He doesn't need to be rested. So when you don't bring him at all, even on the bench, and then you tell the press conference, I'm resting him, it just creates an issue that doesn't need to be there. We're all grown-ups, right? We know they don't like each other. We know that he doesn't like really playing with Ozil in the team, and that's kind of fine. I can see why, and they don't have to get on. Like, people don't. Some people just don't get on with one another, and that's kind of the end of it. And it's kind of unfortunate, but I think we all know that's where this is at. And so by not bringing him at all, I feel like Emery is just rousing a sleeping dog and making it a thing again. When Ozil was an unused sub in the North London derby, no one really talked about it because he was on the bench, and a few people said, "Oh, maybe he could have come off." But
it was the Mkhitaryan swap. Yeah, I think some people thought he could have.
Yeah, yeah. But it wasn't like a big political thing. He was in the squad. He didn't bring him on. Okay, small talking point. Now it's a talking point. Now it's a thing because he said quite pithily in a press conference, "Oh, I'm resting him." And he says that knowing that everyone knows he doesn't need a rest. That's the last thing he needs at the moment. So that leaves it open to kind of what he's saying there. In kind of double speak is, I've got a problem with him. I don't like him. I don't want him. And it's like, we know that, and we know that it's a complete impasse. There is no point in doing this, for a Europa League away game, which, to be honest, even if you consider him a bit of a flight risk, it's the Europa League. You played Saka and Smith Rowe, so you obviously, as you said at the outset, you thought that this game was worth taking a couple of flight risks for. So to not even take him at all, I feel like it's, again, Emery's making it a point. And I just don't think it's necessary. This has been going on for 12 months. Everyone knows what's happening. Let's just get on with it. And, I don't think anyone at this point, expectations are so low of their relationship. We don't expect Ozil to start every game or anything close to it by now. But, not even bringing him in a 19-man squad, he bought Rob Holding.
Can I ask
and
you
Rob
a question?
Holding wasn't on the bench.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it remotely possible that there is still a security risk, but they've asked the manager not to allude to that because it empowers those people or whatever the case may be, and that to be fair, that sucks for Emery and it sucks for Ozil that they wouldn't come out with it. But is that too conspiratorial for you?
I think so because Kolasinac played.
Yeah,
and
very good point.
Also. And also, you come up with a better excuse than I'm resting him. I just think saying I'm resting him is him trying to make it obvious that he's not resting him, that he's just not picking him because he doesn't like him. And
good points. Yep.
Yeah. And like I said, he bought Rob Holding and that's fine because I'm sure there's like a good reason behind that.
Was it just because Rob wanted to see Frankfurt? Because I feel like if you're recovering from injury and you're not going to be named on the bench, then you stay home at Colney and you work with the physios. What's the point of that?
Well, they always bring 19 just in case someone has to drop out, and I think it's probably just as much a psychological thing. Let's bring him along.
Yeah, sure.
They train at Colney in the morning, before they fly out, so he didn't lose a training session or anything. I think it makes sense, really, just to get him back involved again. But I just think, just bring him and put him on the bench and don't play him if you don't want to play him. I just feel like it's just he's trying to make a point that just no longer needs to be made.
It's just weird, right? Because he did start him in a Premier League match away to Watford.
Yeah.
And so, if he just wasn't using him and was like, this player is not in my plans, period, you could sort of understand it. But it's like a Zidane thing with Bale. Him. Yeah, exactly. But it's like a Zidane thing with Bale in a way where Zidane hates him. He doesn't want to use him, but then he's relying on him. And it doesn't... I don't see what the best outcome is there. Anyway, that's certainly enough on the lineup in the traveling squad or non-traveling squad, as the case may be. And we will get to positives because there are positives, and a big one, obviously, is Saka we want to talk about. I think Willock maybe started a little rough, but grew into the game and had a couple of really good moments, including the goal. A little fortunate there. Smith Rowe, maybe not the best game, but back from a longer-term injury and put in a position that's maybe not his strongest. I think before we get to specific individual performances, Tim, I just want to get your thoughts on the flow of this game in general, first of all. I think the thing that is really weird watching Arsenal right now is the pattern of play. It is either us packed into our area, being run backwards towards our goal in transition and letting the opposition play right to the edge of our box and take shots, or it's us running up the pitch the other way, chasing down into the attacking third. Maybe it's by design. to play entirely in transition. But I can't imagine that we would want this little control of a game. Do you find it interesting that we can't get our foot on the ball and have spells of possession and control games, and that teams are able to just play right to the edge of our penalty area so effortlessly?
Yeah, and I think that was a big problem again tonight, to be honest. And again, this game could have gone another way quite easily. Don't get me wrong, the Watford game could have gone another way. We could have, it could have been just as chaotic and we could have won it 3-0.
Yeah, look, we left 4 or 5 goals on the pitch tonight. Aubameyang had a tap in that he missed. There were the counterattacks where the pass wasn't played. There were a couple of shots. Willock should have scored when he went with his right instead of his left. So I don't want to make it sound like they battered us when we got lucky. But yes, at the other end, we weathered a storm. Another 26 shots against us, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And while you're playing like basketball or like Power League, we seem to be playing at the moment, the way it will go is that some games will go for you, like they went tonight, and some will go against you, like they did on Sunday. And I feel like they were similar games, to be honest. It's just they just went slightly different ways, and perhaps Watford had slightly more in attack than Frankfurt did, slightly more individual quality. Perhaps Watford kind of knew Arsenal a little bit better, because this just felt like another game where there was just a massive chasm in the middle of the pitch where there was really no midfield. And like I said earlier, that's why I really think Arsenal need either Ozil or Ceballos in the team at the moment. They really need someone that can control through possession, because I feel like, again, Xhaka had a decent game tonight, but I still think his kind of lack of athleticism creates problems, and that's not really his fault, because you can't change your athleticism really. And then kind of playing Torreira in this like roving number 8 role. Can you
explain that to me? That's a big talking point for me, because it's what's funny is, to his credit, he got on the end of a move, he nearly scored. I mean, he's showing some skills in the attacking third that you don't associate with him, but it still just feels like a very, very poor fit.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't feel like that's what we bought him to do. And he's, he has played as a number 10 before, but I don't think he's ever really played this role. And you can see that even when he gets the positions, largely, I think no one picks him up because no one really expects him to be there. But, he just doesn't have the quality of finish as we saw in the first half. So it's all very well him picking up these positions, which he kind of does because no one really picks him up. But he rarely kind of really threatens with them, to be honest, because that's just not who he is. I find it really weird, because Emery has seemingly throughout his coaching career always insisted on that double pivot. And so you'd really think he'd play him along, especially a player like Xhaka, who isn't mobile, to have an attack dog next to him. So I don't get it either. And it didn't look like Torreira. I could kind of get it a bit more if Torreira's role was more about pressuring the opposition high up. But that's not what he was doing. He was running off the ball high up. And I struggle to understand that one, particularly when we already had Joe Willock in midfield, who's very good at doing that. So I don't really understand why we needed another player who's not as good at it doing it, and particularly when we're getting beaten up in our own half. That pass, that chance for Smith Rowe in the first half, it was Xhaka that pushed up and really well and kind of forced the turnover. But I was kind of looking at that and thinking, why isn't Torreira doing that?
Yeah.
Because that seems like much more his job, or the kind of thing he'd be better at. So, no, I am confused by it, but I think it's reasonably obvious by now that Emery just doesn't like Torreira, really.
Yeah, I don't. It's hard to explain. And I mean, if I think back to the Burnley game earlier in the season, where I think we handled pressure really well, and Ceballos had that brilliant performance. That was his man of the match performance. It was tip tap, and out. Little triangles, good distances, bing bang, out you go, up the pitch, past the pressure. And while that wasn't, I'm not saying we were brilliant in that game. I think we moved the ball up the pitch with short, one-touch, quick passing and movement. The distances are so bad, Tim. If you want to watch this game again, be my guest. I'm certainly not going to. But there were times when Xhaka had the ball or Torreira had the ball, and no one's near them. Now, it doesn't help that the nearest ball is either Chambers for Torreira or Kolasinac for Xhaka, and they are not good players in possession. They're just not. They're not passers. They can't play short possession passing. That's not their style. And I think that cuts off a real angle for us. And maybe Willock is still learning how to drop in and be the extra man and find the space. We know, if you notice, Willock played the role tonight that he played poorly against Newcastle. Now, Willock grew into this game, and we'll get to that. But early in the game, what I think he was struggling to do is find that connective space, to drop in and be an option for midfield partners. But it is really weird watching it because there were times, Tim, they were passing the ball through our middle third and attacking third with no one within 10 yards of them. They'd get to the edge of our area and still have 5 yards. There was one pass in this game that went from our right defensive wing, their left attacking wing, all the way through the box into the right channel. Just a pass on the ground, along the ground, into the box for a shot. And it's just unbelievable to me that you can have that much space and that much ability to just pass right through the penalty area on the ground and complete a pass that way for a shot. So, where do you think, before we move on to some of the positives, because I don't want to make this just a complaining session, but structurally there feels like something is maybe a little bit wrong and something is missing. And I love that we want to play on transition, but the other thing you're seeing is that players are just out of gas early for this team. Some of these players look shattered by 60 minutes because it is basketball. They're up the pitch, they're back the pitch, they're up the pitch, they're back the pitch. And we're defending really deep and letting up a lot of shots. It's surely not sustainable. Is there something that you see that you think is an easy fix here?
Yeah. To repeat, kind of just having a bit of a connector in there. I really think if we just trust Ceballos and play him properly, I know he's got like a little bit of roughness around the edges, but it's really weird how Emery accepts the kind of bones and blisters of some players like Xhaka, but then in others, maybe the ones further up the pitch, like I said, he hasn't started Pepe on the wing away from home yet. He's put him up front or in a kind of free floating role because he just seems terrified about the prospect of Pepe on the wing and not coming back. So instead we've played a midfield diamond and been completely exposed anyway. And then like with Ceballos, I don't know, I'm just getting this sense that he doesn't entirely trust him because he's, that interview you gave to Sid Lowe where he talked about, kind of ruining the equilibrium tactically, a guy who breaks free of structure a little bit. But I also think but I think the other thing I see in Ceballos, though, that kind of, he talked about, sometimes get attracted to the ball and that's a bit of a flaw. But actually in the defensive phase for Arsenal, I think that could be a real strength at the moment because, at the moment, it's our defenders who are suffering when they have the ball, right? So if you're talking about Ceballos getting attracted to the ball when you're watching Arsenal play at the moment, it's not because he's like going up front. If anything, he'll be coming right back onto his centre halves because that's where the ball is. And actually, I think that'd be quite useful for Arsenal at the moment. And I thought in the Burnley game, for example, he did that quite well. We came under some pressure in our own half, but we played out much better against Burnley. And I think a lot of that was because Ceballos kind of, came backwards a little bit and came to help out. And it's not the perfect fix, but I think it's better than what we're doing at the moment. And I think a lot of the things Emery is trying to do to try to fix things, it's actually kind of making things a little bit worse. Like I said with the Pepe thing, like, I don't trust him on the wing, so I'll play a midfield diamond and just completely give up the wing anyway. And then playing Xhaka in front of the defence on his own, so he has to cover loads of ground. And I'm not sure I quite trust Torreira in that position. So instead, I'm going to put him 20 yards forward and just leave Xhaka to do everything defensively. It's all a bit. I still don't think he's quite got the grasp of his players and where their strengths are as individuals and where their strength is as a unit. And sorry to harp back to the Watford game, and maybe we should make this kind of the last negative comment and go on to how great the academy kids are and everything. But I had a conversation with some friends today, about the Watford game, and I was like, You're 2-0 up away to the side who are bottom of the league. You have Ozil, Ceballos, Pepe and Aubameyang on the pitch. And your decision is to sit on it and put the result in the hands of Granit Xhaka, David Luiz, Socrates and a couple of backup fullbacks. Like, that to me is just, that's insane. That is a gross miscalculation of where your talent is. And I think at the moment, Emery has to kind of put up with some of the more attacking rough edges that we have and lean into those rather than exposing the defensive rough edges.
Yeah, I can't really understand it because these are games where you'd say Arsenal are going to have 800 to 1,000 passes and just, kill the game because of their technical superiority and their ability to possess the ball. And we're just routinely outpassed, outshot, outpossessed. And I can't figure out why that is because those players are not more technically secure or better than we are. One thing that seems clear is Emery does want to play in transition more. And in this game, the thing that I saw again, and it's a hallmark of the season so far, players getting sucked to the ball on one side of the pitch and then getting beaten by the switch to the other side. And we don't stretch across the pitch well, so we try to stay compact, but when we get sucked over to the ball, and Xhaka was guilty of this a lot, the switch is on. And when they switch it, they have acres of space to run into. And that's a huge problem because we're winding up conceding a lot of territory down both wings. So you're right, we should move on to the positives. I think you can be thrilled with the victory and thrilled with the way the academy kids played and still have real concerns about the openness, track meet style of these games and the inability to control them. But on the day, we were more than good enough. We did create chances. I mean, what I will say is as much of a mess as this game was, there were periods where it was a hell of a lot of fun because we were either conceding mountains of chances at one end or creating gilt-edged chances at the other that we were spurning for quite a while. Before we get to the quality of Saka and Willock and, to some extent, Smith Rowe, let's quickly talk about Martinez. This is a guy who recently gave an interview and quite boldly was like, I want to be the number one. I'm better than Leno. I deserve it. Which... okay, you sort of turn your head at that, but that is the mentality you need to have. He feels he should be playing now. He's at that stage of his career. He gets this game, and he kept us in it. One really interesting sidebar, I will say, we didn't pass out from the back as much this game, but when we did go long, that was almost worse. It came back at us so quick. We do not have an out ball when we go long. So I think we are going to have to play out from the back if we want to be successful because we cannot kick long and have it come right back at us. But as far as Martinez's performance, I mean, certainly can't complain. Had a lot to do and did it well.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there was a save in there I wouldn't have expected him to make.
There was the hand, the strong hand low. Was it a right hand down to his right from the left channel?
Yeah. And his handling was very secure. And what you want from a goalkeeper really is for them to give you confidence. And I kind of, you want... With goalkeepers, a lot of it's about feel as much as anything. You want to feel secure, and he gave me that feeling tonight. Like my heart didn't jump into my throat when a Frankfurt player lined up a shot from 25 yards because I didn't have that Ospina feel where it was like. Oh no! Maybe
you mean Almunia feel? You mean? I could go on.
Or Almunia feel? Yeah. Or even I don't think he's like this anymore. But even like occasionally Fabianski when he was with us.
Manone, that
go
on and on. Yep.
Yeah. Whereas Martinez, he kind of looked like he belonged in the goal, and I think he's looked like that the last few times he's played. And you know what? Look, let's have it right. He should. He's 27 now. Like he's. I know in goalkeeping years that's. That's not quite as old as an outfield player, but it's still, he's been around a while. He's been at the club nearly 10 years now, and he should be really knocking on the door. He probably should have been knocking a bit harder a couple of years ago. But yeah, absolutely. And I really liked his handling and his kind of decisiveness from low crosses as well. I think Frankfurt put a lot of, whizzed a lot across our 6-yard box, and I think he was pretty decisive. And, his footwork was very good. I thought he made good decisions. He didn't just stay on his line, but at the same time, he wasn't, he was judging every situation as it needed to be judged, which showed a lot of maturity because even if he's 27, he hasn't played a lot of top level football. I was very enthused by what I saw from him tonight. I think he's one player that can absolutely, he didn't And again, he's 27, so he shouldn't. But he didn't look like a rookie out there. He looked like he'd played a lot of senior games, and that's all you can ask.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ospina, and I have to say, look, I am not going to go all Emery here where I like a big guy at the base of midfield, but I do like a big guy in goal. There's something to be said for a guy who can touch the crossbar without jumping.
Who fills the net 100%.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, David Ospina is actually a pretty decent shot stopper, to be fair, but I still like a guy who, when he comes out to command his area on a set piece, he's jumping 3 feet above the rest of the guys, when his arms are up.
Yep.
I don't know. It just looks right. So that's something that fits my eye. You had another comment there?
No.
Okay.
That's,
good enough. All right. So
agree.
Let's do this. I do want to get to Saka. I do want to get to Willock a bit and just the goals and the good stuff, since we haven't really covered much of it. So we're going to do that. But I think we should tell everybody about The Athletic, because it is a really special website, and you do definitely want to hear about it. I know those of you listening right now have been thinking, get to The Athletic promotion already. So I apologize for making you wait, but we will do that now. It's a couple presses of the skip button if you hate it. Look, we didn't do it last episode. Every other episode, you know what? We'll leave these out. But for now, hit the skip button a few times, you'll be past it. But if you want to hear, we have some nice little music under it. Tells you all about it. You can hear what's special about it. Either way, your choice. We'll take a break. Be back after this. Okay, it's time to tell you about The Athletic, the new home of football writing and a world-class sports website. You can get The Athletic for half off and a month trial right now if you go to theathletic.com/Arsenal Vision. You'll help the pod, and of course you'll help The Athletic too, but that's a good thing because you will be at the new home of football getting world-class writing and the best coverage of Arsenal from writers like Amy Lawrence, whom we love, has been on the pod, David Ornstein, James McNicholas, also known as Gunnerblog, myself, but don't let that hold you back. The coverage of sports is unrivaled, and there's no advertising to get in the way, no clickbait. They're not chasing ad revenue. They're just trying to write great in-depth articles. They've broken some incredible news. They've had some incredible interviews. Loved the article about the Eddie Nketiah loan to Leeds and how that came about. So there's a lot to like there. Try it out. It's a month free. And then if you stick with it, it's $2.50 a month. That's it. So you can go to theathletic.com/Arsenal Vision and try it now. See what all the buzz is about. Go sign up now, theathletic.com/Arsenal Vision. All right, we're back. Thanks for putting up with that. And I hope some of you will have enjoyed it and be thankful for it. And those of you who are not, you know what? Thanks for sticking with us. Tim, let's talk about the star of the show. We've waited way too long. We're nearly 40 minutes in, and we have to talk Bukaya Saka. I think there's definitely a few minutes to save in the podcast for Willock, who scored the opening goal, who had some really good moments. That one driving run where he set up, I think, Aubameyang, and people were hearkening back to Vieira. That was one. We'll get to all that. But Saka has it. I don't know how to describe it, but you saw it in the preseason, and unfortunately it's going to be compared with Nelson. Reece Nelson is a talented player who may someday be a star for Arsenal, but I can't help feeling when I watch Saka, he just has more of it. He has great close control, a really powerful, explosive first step, sort of like what Welbeck had in that respect, where he can burst away from you, and as he showed on the goal, He has a great finish in him, but he also has a final ball, which he demonstrated twice with the 2 assists. I think this is a player who certainly showed that he can be given more responsibility, and considering that with Lacazette out and Aubameyang playing up front, left wing is a position that is open for debate. He's certainly thrust himself into that debate tonight, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And having kind of lost Mkhitaryan and Iwobi this summer. In the
we didn't lose them.
Pepe,
we know exactly where they are. To be fair, we sent them away.
We just let them. We just drove into the middle of the forest and told them they're free. But yeah, it means. I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago. It means that a couple of those young players are really going to have to step up because they're going to have to play some games. And actually, in that interview Vinay gave, where he kind of gave the dreaded vote of confidence to Unai Emery, he spoke a bit about the young players, and he actually spoke about it being like financially efficient. He just said, something I've been saying for years, that like if you fill out your squad places with academy players, that gives you more money to spend on like a Pepe or an Aubameyang or just a grade A kind of ready-made talent. And what you don't want to be doing what you don't want to be doing, and obviously he didn't name names, but I'm going to, what you don't want to be doing is spending like 17 million on Lucas Perez or putting 200 grand a week into Mkhitaryan or players like that, when you get an Iwobi. for free. And have him play a valuable squad. Like even if you just get a clutch of Iwobi's, you get 3 seasons out of them, decent squad role, sell them for 40 million, great. But would Mkhitaryan have done better than Saka tonight?
No,
I mean he'd have had to have gone some to do better. And I know it's the Europa League and it's the Europa League group stage, and those games are always a little less intense because there's less consequence to them. But Saka, like you say, that those attacking spots, they're up for grabs. Beyond the front 3 comprised of our 3 record signings, they're up for grabs for the likes of Smith Rowe, for the likes of Nelson. And I tweeted this. The only young player that had a bad night tonight really was Reece Nelson. I know Smith Rowe didn't play brilliantly, but I saw Smith Rowe play against Northampton in whatever they're calling the Checkatrade Cup this year, and that was under 21s, and he was way below the mark physically, and that was only like a fortnight ago. So I think we've got to be a bit patient with him until at least Christmas. He was out for a while with an injury that does have a bit of legacy to it, that kind of hip groin area. But look, Saka is that there's a couple of things going for him. Emery really wants like enterprising wide players, right? That's what we've seen. That's really that's where he thought the priority was in the transfer window. So we went out and got spent all that money on Pepe, reintroduced Nelson into the squad. That's a position he's really interested in. He really wants like those wide forwards, and so he kind of fits Emery's mould. The other very positive thing for him is that he kind of fits what Aubameyang wants as well, which is like a proper left winger, goes on the outside, gets the ball in with his left foot. And I thought what was really interesting was that these two played very close together tonight. Aubameyang really hung out over on that left-hand side. And actually in the first half, they were playing almost like a front 2. And off the ball, Smith Rowe dropped like right back into a kind of right midfield position, and Saka was just kind of floating, and they got Aubameyang and Saka very close together. And on one hand, that's credit to Aubameyang because you can say he kind of helped coach an inexperienced young player through that, and they just looked like they had a fairly instant understanding tonight. And Saka, I always, I don't watch the youth team as much as I used to, but I know like he's quite a dribbly kind of wide forward, and he's got a goal in him and a nice left foot and the rest of it, and he can take players on. But what I saw from him tonight as well was a bit of a through ball, like you said. And what I quite liked as well was actually in the first half, he had that through ball that he kind of messed up. When he should have just played it half a second earlier to Aubameyang, slightly delayed, and it was cut out. But like 2 minutes later, he plays another through ball for Torreira, and he just kept plugging away at that. And he strikes me as like quite a good percentage player. And I don't think Arsenal have quite enough of that in attack. When I used to watch like Mkhitaryan, for example, I kind of used to think sometimes you're too precise. Like you want the Goldilocks shot or the Goldilocks pass, and I sometimes think that about Lacazette in front of goal. Anyway, I think sometimes you really only want to pull the trigger or do something when there's like a 95% chance it's going to come off. Whereas guys like Aubameyang and Saka looks a bit like this, and even Willock to a degree look like that kind of, this might have a 70% chance of working, but if I do it 3 or 4 times in a game, it will come off one time. And, with respect of him kind of just getting to the byline and clipping passes in, it was his cross for Torreira that he stood up to the back post as well, which really should have been another assist for him. I really like the look of him. He looks like quite a kind of nice, fairly traditional wide player. And if you're talking about the wide left spot being up for grabs, he's done himself absolutely no harm, which is not to say let's start him like in every game now and just run him into the ground, but he'll probably get on the bench on Sunday now, which with an indifferent or ordinary performance he probably wouldn't have tonight. I'm sure he'll play again against Forest in the League Cup, so he's got a little bit of a chance now to build on something and perhaps even nudge himself ahead of Nelson.
if he doesn't play the next 33 league games from the start, I will be furious. Couple of things. I mean, Nelson lost the ball quite a bit against Watford, and the one thing about Saka that I like, he keeps the ball really close to his feet when he dribbles. He has that real close control. He has the ability to burst away, which I love. The shot that he scores, I mean, he passes that into the corner from 19 yards out. That is an excellent, expert, composed finish. To say this game is a meaningless game is wrong in the sense that this is European competition. Frankfurt is a real club. Mm-hmm. There's a real atmosphere. Mm-hmm. He didn't wilt when he took a kicking. The goal he sets up for Aubameyang, he wins the ball back. He didn't just want to do the fun parts of the game. He was willing to get stuck in. He wins the ball back. He skips past a guy and plays the pass. There's a lot there to like, and it reminds me of when Serge Gnabry broke into the team the first time before the injury, or when Oxlade-Chamberlain arrived. There are certain players that just, in the final third, they have something, an explosiveness, or the way they strike the ball that you just immediately see it. I have to admit, it was the thing with Iwobi that I just never fell in love with, and Iwobi has lots of good qualities, but he doesn't have that dynamic, explosive burst. He doesn't strike the ball with that clean, crisp hit, and he did other things well. He was strong, he controlled it, he could connect, he could carry, he could play the 1-2 passing. But Saka has that go forward, dynamic, straight line, exciting final third kind of play, and I think we are crying out for it. I think Aubameyang will love playing with a player like that. I think both he and Pepe will only benefit from Tierney and Bellerin coming back, because I think you do see the extent to which Kolasinac, and tonight it was Chambers, at the weekend it's Maitland-Niles, are not able to necessarily provide the support for those wide players, that lets them get a little, tuck in a little more, get a little more central and influence the play around the box. But all in all, a 10 out of 10 night for Saka. And I would go so far as to say he could and probably should start against Villa at the weekend, because I don't want to see the 4-diamond-2 again. I don't think that's good for Pepe. I don't think that system works. And if you have two true wide players in Pepe and Saka, who you trust, with an absolute fucking superstar killer up front, you can go 4-3-3. You can. And you can put Torreira at the base, and you can play Ceballos and Guendouzi. You can play, take your pick of those three, and you can go do something. So I hope that's what we'll see. You mentioned Smith Rowe not being at the level. I think that's fair. Look, guy's just back from injury. He's playing in Germany, where he had went on loan, probably pressing a little bit. He's playing on the side that I don't think is his natural side necessarily, with a fullback on his side who is not an attacking player. So a tougher role for him. But Willock was interesting. I thought he started the game a little poorly, grew into it, had that one magnificent Vieira-esque run to him. I'm curious what you think of him, Tim, because I struggle to sort of pigeonhole him positionally. When he's a 10, I don't think he necessarily has the awareness of where to sort of pop up and collect the ball. When he's an 8, I don't know if he's defensively intense enough, or a 6. He's not a 6. So what do you make? I mean, obviously he had some really bright moments, including the goal, a little fortunate there, but he could have had a couple of assists. What do you make of his performance? And then where do you see him landing positionally in this system?
That's a really interesting question. And, I think just because of the time he's come into the team, a lot of us, myself included, have kind of had that kind of, almost Ramsey comparator going in our heads, because he's got that kind of arrive late in the box, as we saw with his goal. And he does have those qualities. And sometimes he does seem like quite an off-the-ball player, but then we've seen it in the last couple of games. He had that brilliant dribble at the end of the Watford game, which unfortunately he just got a bit greedy when he
right into the
travelled
box.
about 30 yards.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he should have slid Aubameyang in, but he was already seeing the headlines, and he tried to go one more, and he did that again tonight. And actually, it's funny you ask about where he'll land and stuff like that, because James McNicholas kind of tweeted me tonight and said that he actually reminded him of Diaby, which is a comparison I'd never thought of. And then like you saying, like, where's he going to land and what kind of player is he? It's quite an interesting question, because did we ever work that out with Diaby?
No. Now, granted, he was never fit enough long enough to figure it out, thanks to Dan Smith. But
no, but what was Diaby? Was he a 4? Was he a 6? Was he an 8? Was he a 10? He was kind of all of those things and none of those things.
Yep.
And we never quite worked out what he was. Even on a good day. I think he's just one of those, and maybe Willock will be like this. He's just one of those players you put on the pitch, and you put maybe a structure around him, because he moved to a slightly more of a kind of number 10 role in the second half, and then Torreira did kind of sit back a little bit more, so it was a little bit more like a double pivot with Xhaka and Torreira, albeit
I think that suits him
slightly
more.
Lopsided. And,
I don't know that his athleticism, or maybe it's not athleticism, but defensive intensity, like he doesn't look good chasing back. He doesn't necessarily look
no.
like someone who has the right sort of tenacity to sit in front of the back four. I think if he can develop a slightly better awareness of space and when to drop in and provide support for his double pivot or whoever's playing central midfield, I think he can be more of that modern De Bruyne style 10 if he can add those traits. I don't know that he'll ever be a 6 or an 8.
He looks better when the game's ahead of him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And this is where he is a bit like Ramsey. He's better at arriving behind the ball. I think in whatever position that is, whether that's in the opposition's penalty area or even like when we're defending, I think he's much better when the game's in front of him and he's kind of arriving on the ball. And like I said, he's a weird player in that on one hand you kind of regard him as an off the ball player, but on the other hand, when he gets the ball and he gets a gallop on, he's a really, really good dribbler. I didn't know he had that in him, that kind of carrying the ball forward, and I think that's so promising to have another player that can do that, having lacked that type of player for so long. We've now got, you look at him, you look at Saka, you look at Pepe, you look at Ceballos can do it. And it's no coincidence that Frankfurt, how many yellow cards, they got a red card, and how many yellows tonight? How many times were they just hacking players down because we were breaking on them and we had guys that could run ahead of steam and take them on, and that just wasn't happening last season with a very, very kind of sterile. Watching Arsenal progress the ball last season was like watching someone push a boulder up a hill at times, whereas now we've just got a few more players who've got that next gear.
If only they had that gear going back the other direction too.
Yeah, exactly. There's that. And I still think, like I've said a few times, we just need that other technical gear in there, that player that can just put his foot on the ball and give us that technical security, because a lot of that would stop the kind of basketball element if we could just keep the ball. But having runners like that, and I think that's part of the reason we're getting the basketball games. But when it's us kind of surging forward, we've got these players who can kind of surge with the ball a little bit. So maybe we just need to tweak the balance in there a little bit. But as for I just think that Willock probably is a fairly modern attacking number 8. And it will just depend on what kind of midfield is around him. But I'm enthused by him. I think he's got some really interesting qualities. Like you, I'm not exactly sure how it's all going to come out in the wash in terms of where he fits into this team and to what sort of role he has, whether he's a high-level squad player, whether he starts lots of games. I'm not sure how that's all going to shake out. But I think he's got some interesting qualities, and what we really need is a settled system somehow so that we can work some of this out.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I mean, to me, the solution just seems obvious. You play a 4-3-3, you put Torreira at the base, you pick two of Guendouzi, Ceballos, and Willock. And if you want to put Willock with Ceballos can drop in next to Torreira a little bit. He has a little of that defensive intensity. He can help wriggle out of pressure. If Torreira's under pressure, he can drop and collect and carry it forward. Guendouzi can do a little of that too. They both have that dagger ball and that ability in the final third to release a player. But if you want to do it with Ceballos and Willock, then Willock has the ability to arrive on the end of moves, to get into the box, to be an extra strike, not a striker, but an extra scoring option in there. You can use his dribbling and carrying to get past players in the middle third into the attacking third. It all points to moving away from Xhaka to me at the end of the day, and I know that screams bias, and I raise my hand and say guilty, but that to me seems like the solution. And then you have Aubameyang through the middle and your two wide forwards, Pepe and one other, and that leads me to the final point, Tim, which is that I thought it was sort of an indifferent performance from Pepe. I'm not going to pick on him. He's still finding his feet. But I gotta tell you, I agree with you in the sense that you got to play 3 up front and let him be one of the 2 wide players. I think he has to take a role on the wing where he can sort of cut in on that left foot and bring the ball back in the middle of the pitch and slip someone through or take a shot. But the system has to help get him settled, because I don't think what we're doing with the 4-diamond-2 is helping him. And he is a player who does have a neat little final run, a little last shoulder run on him from central spaces. That doesn't do you a lot of good if there's no one to release that ball anyway. What'd you make of his cameo, and what's your take on the concern, if any, for Pepe and the start he's had to life at Arsenal?
So I don't have any concerns with him. I think his talent is obvious. I also think we don't take into account enough things like summer tournaments. He went deep in the AFCON. The AFCON went on till nearly August. Like, he was playing till something like the 16th of July. That has an impact, particularly when you make a move to a new country. So there's those things that I think you can really clearly and obviously see where his elite skill set is, as a dribbler and as someone who can protect and move the ball. I think we're making. I think the manager's making things harder for him. A bit like Ceballos. I wrote about Ceballos this week, and I was just like saying, if you're Ceballos, like, what's your feedback on your time at Arsenal so far? Like, what are you supposed to think about what you've been doing and what your role is and how you see yourself in this team? Because it just chops and changes in every game, and I kind of think something similar about Pepe. I also think we're playing in a way that just doesn't really support him. Because I think my fear is that Emery's going to go with this Pepe, Aubameyang, Lacazette front three, and he's kind of scared of it, and he doesn't really want to do that, but that's the position the club have kind of put him in by selling certain players, and so he's going to compensate for it by playing like really conservative midfields and almost doing what he did with Aubameyang and Lacazette last season and just cutting them off from the rest of the team and just going, right, get on with it, kind of thing. And I don't think that's the best way to support him. And it all comes back to just having that connector in there for me, because at the moment Pepe's being kind of fighting for scraps. There's not like an obvious kind of ball progression to him. There's not an obvious line that the ball gets to him. A lot of it is him chasing long balls into the channels, or we've been trying to progress the ball up the pitch and not been able to do it, or he gets it like on a counter attack and there's only one player up with him. I think at the moment there's a little bit that he's not going to be quite sharp for a number of, shall we say, soft factors. I also think, honestly, that the coach has just made it a bit more complicated for him than it needs to be. And that's the story for quite a lot of the players in the team at the moment.
I'm not worried at all. I think his talent is precocious.
No, same.
I think you can see it a mile away. I think you can see the personality of the player. I don't think he hides. I think you saw that at Anfield. I believe that he maybe has to start to pick spots a little better between when to dribble and when to just make the simple pass. Just a little bit of decision making, and that'll come as he learns his teammates, and hopefully as a system develops where there are players near him. Bellerin coming back could be a big factor in that. But I think once he starts to get that right, there'll be no stopping him. I really think he's special. Yeah. So I'm not worried in the least bit.
We were. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were just saying about Martinez, for example, when someone looks right in the goal, and sometimes you just look at a player and they just look right on the pitch and you just think, yeah, he's a player, and I just get that sense from Pepe. Whether we'll wring and juice the absolute best out of him, we'll see, but I'm like you, I just look at him and think, yep, that, I know quality when I see it. It's a bit like when someone's behind you and you can't see them and you haven't seen them and you haven't heard them, but you know they're behind you. You just get that sixth sense when you're an adult. Like, you just get that feel of there's someone behind me. It's kind of the same when you see a top quality player. You just think, yeah, he's quality. There's just no doubt in that, and it's just now it's down to us and it's down to the coach to get the absolute best out of him.
I have to admit, I turned around just to look. Look, the thing I will say is, you just saw it. He came on the pitch within 2 minutes of being on the pitch. The first thing he does is he collects the ball in the middle and bursts past the guy with a change of pace and a quick dribble, and he glides by him and he picks up a yellow card, and he's got to be a nightmare to play against. And once the end product comes, I think there'll be no stopping it. So I'm not too worried about it. I think we can leave it there. Are you expecting just more of the same this weekend? A sort of structureless track meet that hopefully results in Arsenal outscoring Villa?
I wouldn't be surprised. But I am kind of confident that we'll be able to master that against Villa.
And I know I'm a fanboy, so I'm just going to lean into it. When you have Aubameyang on the pitch, there's always a chance. I mean, I know he squandered a tap-in again tonight. I mean, that's in his locker, but it's because he's always on the end of moves. When you see him pick the ball up, when he takes a shot from the edge of the area, when he glides onto the end of the moves, he's just different gravy, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's weird, isn't it? I still think that he's underrated and underappreciated.
15 goals in 15 games, yep.
Yeah. And in a team that's, by all accounts, by pretty much everyone's account, is just a bit of a mess at the moment. And during those 15 games has not been in good form at all. But, on the left wing, up front, he's just sticking the ball in the net again and again. And, maybe it's kind of, I've often compared him to Aguero, and it took years of Aguero doing that before people went, he's quite good, isn't he? Like, it took at least like 5 seasons for people to notice that he was just absolutely habitually scoring 25, 30 goals a season. And so, maybe, I don't know if Aubameyang will be around long enough to be properly appreciated, but I'm trying to think of better strikers in the Premier League, and I think he's in the company with Aguero and Liverpool's front three any day of the week.
If you can keep pace goal-scoring wise with Man City's Sergio Aguero when you're at Arsenal going through what we've been going through, that says a lot. Anyway, Tim's on Twitter at Stoberto. Thanks, bud.
My pleasure as always.
Great to have you back, and Tim will be on again in the future. If you've been looking out for it, by the way, some travel logs from Tim on Patreon of videos and pictures of his trips to the away games, and I'm sure some from the home games will come as well. So definitely a cool feature you can check out there. We always say this at the end of the podcast, but I do just want to express how much we really appreciate you guys for listening. And after the Watford pod, there was a lot of really positive, constructive feedback, and I think at a time when it's easy for people to treat each other poorly, I think as listeners, as contributors, as people who engage a lot on social media and stuff, it was really nice to see that the debate was handled with class and grace and equanimity and all the things that I do not typically display on the podcast. So I appreciate you for doing that. In any case, we love you. We'll take a break and we'll come back and talk to you after Arsenal 10, Villa 0.